The ambush at Echo Canyon. Captain Nora Blackwood had seen her share of strange things during her 10 years with the Interstellar Diplomatic Corps, but nothing quite prepared her for the sight before her. The massive creature circling her position moved with impossible grace, its midnight blue fur rippling with embedded neural sensors that pulsed with an eerie cyan glow. This was no ordinary predator, it was a weapon, a perfect fusion of alien biology and cutting-edge technology. The diplomatic shuttle's wreckage smoldered behind her, casting orange shadows across Echo Canyon's rust-colored walls. Her pilot, Private June Park, lay unconscious but stable in a shallow cave nearby, protected by an emergency force field. Their routine mission to the mining colony of New Horizon had turned into a carefully orchestrated trap. "Fascinating creature, isn't it, Captain?" The voice crackled through her comm system, smooth and cultured. "The Lumaran wolf, enhanced with our latest biotechnology. The perfect synthesis of natural hunting instinct and programmed loyalty." Nora adjusted her grip on her pulse rifle, keeping the beast in her sights while scanning for the source of the transmission. "Dr. Aldrich, I presume? Wanted in 3-star systems for illegal genetic manipulation and crimes against sentient species?" A soft chuckle answered her. "Your dossiers are impressive as always, Captain. Though I prefer to think of myself as a visionary. Evolution is such a slow process, I'm merely accelerating it." The wolf lunged forward, faster than anything its size should move. Nora rolled, the creature's claws scraping against her armor's shoulder plate. The neural sensors along its spine flared brighter, and she caught glimpse of something that made her pause, a flicker of resistance in its golden eyes, a moment of hesitation in its programmed attack. "Having conscience issues with your perfect weapon, Doctor?" Nora circled slowly, noting how the wolf's movements seemed to stutter between fluid grace and mechanical precision. "Looks like your control isn't as complete as you'd like." "Minor calibration issues," Aldrich replied, though a note of annoyance had crept into his voice. "The Lumaran species has proved surprisingly resilient to neural programming. But every beast can be broken, given time." The wolf charged again, but this time Nora was ready. She fired a precise shot, not at the creature, but at a neural node near its shoulder. The beast howled, not in pain, but in what sounded almost like relief. It stumbled, shaking its massive head as if trying to clear it. "Interesting theory," Nora said, keeping her voice steady as she edged closer to the disoriented wolf. "But I've always found cooperation beats coercion. These Lumaran wolves, they're pack hunters, aren't they? Social creatures with complex family bonds. Your programming isn't fighting against simple instinct, Doctor. It's fighting against intelligence, loyalty, and choice." The wolf's eyes met hers, and this time there was clear awareness in them. The neural sensors flickered erratically as the creature fought against its programming. Nora slowly lowered her weapon. "What are you doing, Captain?" Aldrich's voice held a warning edge. "That creature is designed to kill you." "No," Nora replied softly, maintaining eye contact with the wolf. "It was designed to obey you. But you made a crucial mistake, you left it intelligent enough to recognize a choice." The neural sensors suddenly went dark, and the wolf's posture changed completely. It stood tall, no longer in an attack stance, its ears forward with curiosity rather than aggression. A low rumble emerged from its throat, not a growl, but something almost like a purr. "Impossible." Aldrich's voice cracked with rage. "The programming dash just failed," Nora finished, allowing herself a small smile as the wolf stepped closer, now radiating an almost protective air. "And I think your perfect weapon just chose a new pack." Static filled the comm channel as Aldrich cut the connection. Nora knew this was just the beginning, a man like him wouldn't accept failure easily. But as she looked at her new ally, seeing intelligence and determination in those golden eyes, she felt her chances improving significantly. "Well, friend," she said, reaching out slowly to touch the wolf's massive shoulder, What do you say we go rescue my pilot and then have a serious discussion about your former employer? The wolf's tail swished once in clear agreement, and Nora felt a surge of optimism. Sometimes the best diplomatic solutions came from the most unexpected sources. She had come to New Horizon seeking evidence of illegal weapons development. Instead, she'd found something far more valuable, an ally who understood firsthand the importance of fighting for freedom. Now they just had to survive long enough to use that knowledge. Beast and Bond. The medical bay of the emergency outpost hummed with activity as Private June Park's vitals stabilized on the monitoring screen. Captain Nora Blackwood stood watch, her new companion a silent guardian at her side. The Lumaran wolf's presence had caused quite a stir among the outpost staff, but one stern look from Nora had silenced any protests. "Your friend needs a name," June said weakly from the medical bed, his voice hoarse but amused. "We can't keep calling it the wolf." Nora studied the magnificent creature, noting how the deactivated neural sensors along its spine now looked like stripes of silver against its midnight blue fur. "Phantom," she decided. "For how you moved in the canyon. That work for you?" The wolf, Phantom, tilted its head in consideration before letting out a soft rumble of approval. "Captain Blackwood," a voice called from the doorway. Commander Elena Torres of the Colonial Security Force strode in, her expression grave. "We've completed our preliminary scan of the neural tech we removed from your friend. The results are disturbing." Nora moved to examine the holographic display Torres activated. Complex schematics rotated in the air, showing the intricate web of technology that had been embedded in Phantom's nervous system. "This goes beyond simple behavior modification," Torres explained, highlighting several components. "These circuits were designed to collect and transmit data, neural patterns, behavioral responses, adaptation rates. Your wolf wasn't just a weapon, it was a test subject in a much larger experiment." Phantom growled softly, and Nora felt a surge of anger. Aldrich wasn't just building an army. He was developing a control system that could be adapted to any species. "Exactly," Torres confirmed. "And based on the transmission logs we recovered, he's been sending this data to multiple hidden facilities across the frontier. The operation is massive, with funding traces leading back to something called the Nexus Corporation." Nora had heard whispers about Nexus, a shadowy organization that operated in the gaps between legal jurisdictions, always just beyond the reach of colonial law. "Any leads on their locations?" "One," Torres said, switching the display to a star chart. "We've detected similar neural signatures on Helios Prime, centered around an abandoned mining complex. The energy usage patterns suggest significant underground facilities. A good place to hide illegal research," Nora mused. She felt Phantom press against her leg, the wolf's muscles tense with anticipation. "And I'm guessing my friend here might know the layout." Torres nodded. The neural tech included detailed mapping data. "If you're planning what I think you're planning, should remind you that this is well outside standard diplomatic protocols. With respect, Commander, standard protocols went out the airlock when Aldrich ambushed a diplomatic vessel." Nora's hand rested on Phantom's head, drawing strength from the creature's steady presence. "This is bigger than jurisdictional disputes. If Aldrich perfects this technology, every species in known space could be at risk," Torres finished. "I understand. But you'll need support. My teams have detected unusual energy signatures suggesting at least 20 more modified creatures in that facility." June pushed himself up on his elbows, wincing slightly. "You're not leaving me behind this time, Captain. I can have the backup shuttle prepped in 2 hours." Nora looked at her pilot, then at Phantom, seeing the same determination in both their eyes. "Commander Torres, I'd like to officially request colonial security support for an investigation into suspected violations of the Interspecies Rights Accord." Torres smiled grimly. "Request granted. I'll have a tactical team ready in 3 hours." But Captain. She paused, glancing at Phantom, are you certain you can trust it? The neural programming might have dormant triggers we haven't detected. Phantom's golden eyes met Torres's gaze steadily, displaying an intelligence that made the commander step back slightly. Nora smiled. Trust goes both ways, Commander. Phantom chose to break free of Aldrich's control, chose to help us. In my experience, earned loyalty is stronger than any programmed obedience. As if to emphasize her point, Phantom moved to examine the holographic display of the mining complex, nose pointing to specific areas, entrances, security checkpoints, power stations. Each indication was precise, deliberate, showing not just knowledge but strategic thinking. Besides, Nora added, watching her ally map out their infiltration route, I think Aldrich made a critical error in his calculations. He was so focused on creating the perfect weapon that he never considered he might instead create the perfect partner. Torres nodded slowly, convinced by the obvious cooperation between human and wolf. I'll brief my team. We move at 0600. She paused at the door. And Captain? Good luck. I have a feeling you're going to need it. After Torres left, Nora began reviewing the facility schematics, noting how Phantom's intelligence complemented her tactical training. Together, they identified key vulnerabilities, planned contingencies, prepared for the challenges ahead. You know this is probably a trap, June said quietly. Almost certainly, Nora agreed, scratching behind Phantom's ears. But sometimes the best way to spring a trap is to walk into it knowingly, especially when you bring along an unexpected ally. Phantom rumbled in agreement, and Nora felt her resolve strengthen. Tomorrow they would begin dismantling Aldrich's operation, but tonight was for preparation, for solidifying the unlikely bond between human and wolf that might just save them all. As she worked, Nora couldn't help but appreciate the irony. Aldrich had tried to create the ultimate weapon of control, but instead, he had facilitated something far more powerful, a partnership based on mutual trust and shared purpose. Now it was time to show him exactly. The underground network. The abandoned mining complex on Helios Prime loomed before them, a maze of twisted metal and crumbling concrete bathed in the pale light of twin moons. Captain Nora Blackwood checked her tactical display one final time as Commander Torres's team moved into position around the facility's perimeter. All teams, radio silence from here on, Nora whispered into her comm, Phantom and I will take point. Remember, we're likely to encounter other modified creatures, don't engage unless absolutely necessary. Phantom pressed close to her side, his midnight blue fur blending perfectly with the shadows. The wolf's keen senses had already detected movement within the complex, other beings like himself, their neural implants broadcasting faint signatures that only he could perceive. They moved through the outer security grid with practiced precision, Phantom guiding them through blind spots in the sensor network. The facility's automated defenses had been designed to detect traditional infiltration methods, but they hadn't accounted for the intimate knowledge of a former test subject. The first real challenge came at a sealed blast door. As Nora worked on bypassing the security panel, Phantom suddenly tensed, ears swiveling toward the darkness behind them. A low growl rumbled in his throat, not aggressive, but cautionary. From the shadows emerged another modified creature, this one a massive feline resembling an earth panther but with distinctive alien characteristics. Iridescent scales mixed with its midnight fur, and its 6 eyes glowed with the same neural implant signatures as Phantom's old ones. Nora's hand moved to her weapon, but Phantom stepped forward, positioning himself between her and the newcomer. The two creatures regarded each other silently, a complex exchange of subtle movements and sense that transcended both their species' differences and their technological modifications. After a tense moment, the feline relaxed its posture and approached slowly. Its neural implants pulsed with an erratic rhythm that Nora recognized, the same pattern Phantoms had shown when fighting against Aldrich's control. Another one breaking free, Nora murmured. Phantom, can you help? The wolf moved closer to the feline, and Nora watched in fascination as they communicated in their own way. She could almost see the struggle as the newcomer fought against its programming, encouraged by Phantom's presence and obvious freedom. The security panel beeped softly as Nora finally bypassed it, but she waited, giving the creatures time. When the feline's implants finally went dark, its posture changed completely, just as Phantom's had in Echo Canyon. "Welcome to the Resistance," Nora said softly. The feline regarded her with intelligent eyes, then deliberately moved to the other side of the corridor, taking up a guard position. As they pressed deeper into the facility, they encountered more modified creatures, each struggling against their programming, each finding strength in Phantom's example. Some joined their group, while others moved to help Torres's teams create diversions around the complex. Finally, they reached the central research hub. Through reinforced windows, Nora could see dozens of stasis pods containing various species, each connected to a central monitoring system. At a massive control station stood a tall, thin man in a pristine white coat, Dr. Victor Aldrich himself. "Ah, Captain Blackwood," Aldrich's voice came through nearby speakers. "And my wayward prototype. I must admit, I'm impressed by how you've turned my own creations against me. But did you really think I wouldn't be prepared for this?" Alarms blared throughout the facility. The stasis pods began opening, releasing their occupants, all fully under Aldrich's control, their neural implants glowing bright and steady. "You see, Captain, while you were freeing my first generation of subjects, I was perfecting the technology. These newer models don't have the same independence issues. Shall we test their loyalty?" The controlled creatures moved with mechanical precision, surrounding Nora's group. But something unexpected happened. Phantom stepped forward, and rather than attacking, he began to emit a low, resonating sound. The feline and other freed creatures joined in, creating a harmonic frequency that made the neural implants on the controlled beings flicker and spark. Aldrich's smug expression faltered. What are they doing?" Nora watched in amazement as the sound grew stronger. The freed creatures weren't just communicating, they were broadcasting their own neural freedom pattern, creating a cascading effect through the facility's network. "You made another mistake, Doctor," Nora said, unable to hide her smile as more and more creatures began breaking free of control. "You assumed that because you could modify their bodies, you could suppress their essential nature. But you can't program away the desire for freedom. You can't override the instinct to help others break their chains." Aldrich slammed his fists on the control panel as his perfect army turned against him. "This is impossible. The programming was perfect." "No," Nora corrected, moving forward with Phantom at her side as Torres's teams breached the research hub. "They were perfect, just not in the way you intended. You wanted weapons, but you created ambassadors. You sought to build an army of slaves, but instead, you gave us allies in the fight for freedom." As colonial security forces secured the facility and began freeing the remaining test subjects, Nora knelt beside Phantom, scratching behind his ears. "Ready to help find the rest of Aldrich's facilities? Something tells me there are more beings out there waiting to break free." Phantom's rumbling purr was all the answer she needed. Together, they had struck a crucial blow against those who would use technology to enslave rather than enhance. But more importantly, they had proven that true strength comes not from control, but from cooperation, not from breaking spirits, but from freeing them. Breaking the chain. The interrogation room aboard the colonial security vessel hummed with tension. Dar. Victor Aldrich sat handcuffed to the table, his pristine white coat now wrinkled and stained, his composed demeanor cracking under the weight of his failure. Captain Nora Blackwood stood at the observation window, watching as Commander Torres conducted the questioning. Outside in the corridor, Phantom and the liberated creatures from the facility waited, their presence a constant reminder of Aldrich's greatest miscalculation. The six-eyed feline, whom they'd named Eclipse, kept a vigilant watch alongside Phantom. The Nexus Corporation is just the beginning, Aldrich was saying, his voice tight with barely contained fury. You have no idea how deep this goes, how many powerful figures are invested in this research. What I created will revolutionize everything, species integration, colonial security, even warfare itself. Torres leaned forward, her expression stern. What you created was slavery, Doctor. You took sentient beings and tried to turn them into puppets. I gave them purpose. Aldrich slammed his hands on the table. I elevated them beyond their base instincts. The door slid open as Nora entered, Phantom padding silently at her side. Aldrich flinched at the sight of his former prototype, then quickly tried to mask his reaction with a sneer. Come to gloat, Captain? Or perhaps to show off how you've tamed my creation? Nora settled into the chair across from him, while Phantom sat alertly beside her. That's your fundamental misunderstanding, Doctor. I haven't tamed anyone. These beings were already extraordinary, you just couldn't see it because you were too focused on controlling them rather than cooperating with them. She placed a data tablet on the table, displaying information recovered from the facility's computers. But let's talk about something more immediate. We found the transmission logs, the funding trails. We know about the other facilities. How many are there? It doesn't matter, Aldrich scoffed. By now, they'll have received warning and initiated emergency protocols. You'll find nothing but empty buildings. A small smile played at the corners of Nora's mouth. That's where you're wrong. You see, while you were perfecting your control technology, you never considered that your subjects might develop their own methods of communication. She nodded to Phantom, who let out a specific series of resonating growls. Throughout the ship, the other liberated creatures responded, creating a harmonic pattern that made the neural sensors in Aldrich's pocket device spark and short out. The doctor's eyes widened. That's impossible. The quantum encryption is based on the same principles as your neural control network, Nora finished. Which means these beings can disrupt it. They've been broadcasting their freedom signal across subspace, reaching other facilities, awakening other captive creatures. Your entire network is unraveling, Doctor. As if to confirm her words, Torres's comm unit beeped. The commander checked it and smiled. Reports coming in from 3 sectors. Multiple facilities discovered, subjects liberating themselves. The colonial security fleet is moving to secure the locations. Aldrich's facade finally cracked completely. You don't understand. The board members, the investors, they won't allow this. They'll send everything they have to protect their investment. We're counting on it, Nora replied calmly. In fact, we've already identified 3 corporate vessels approaching this sector. Heavily armed, no doubt planning to recover their property. She turned to Phantom. Shall we show them why that's a bad idea? The wolf's golden eyes gleamed with intelligence and determination. Outside, the other freed creatures were already moving to their assigned positions throughout the ship. They had trained for this, preparing for the inevitable counterattack. Commander Torres, Nora stood, straightening her uniform. I believe it's time to demonstrate to Nexus Corporation why enslaving intelligent beings is not only morally wrong but tactically unsound. Torres nodded, signaling to her security team to remove Aldrich. Battle stations. And Captain? Good hunting. As they made their way to the bridge, Nora felt the familiar surge of pre-battle tension, but it was tempered by absolute confidence in her allies. The corporate vessels would be expecting to face a standard colonial security force. Instead, they would encounter something unprecedented, a fully integrated team of humans and liberated beings, each bringing their unique strengths to the fight. They still think of you as weapons, she said to Phantom as they stepped onto the bridge. Time to show them your warriors instead. The wolf rumbled in agreement as the first enemy vessels appeared on the tactical display. Around them, the other freed creatures took their positions at various stations, their natural abilities enhanced rather than suppressed by the technology they had reclaimed as their own. Eclipse manned the sensor array, her 6 eyes perfectly suited for monitoring multiple threat vectors. Other beings handled communications, engineering, and defensive systems, each finding their own way to contribute to the coming battle. As the corporate ships launched their first wave of attacks, Nora allowed herself a moment of pride. Aldrich had tried to create the perfect weapons, but instead, he had helped forge the perfect team. Now it was time to show the powers behind Nexus Corporation exactly what that team could do. All stations, battle positions, she commanded, feeling Phantom's steady presence beside her. Let's finish breaking these chains once and for all. Evolution's Edge. The bridge of the Colonial security vessel shuddered under another direct hit from the Nexus Corporation's lead ship. Captain Nora Blackwood gripped her command chair as status reports flooded in from all stations. Around her, the liberated beings worked in perfect harmony with her human crew, their unique abilities turning what should have been an overwhelming assault into an even fight. Their shields are adapting to our weapon frequencies, reported Eclipse from the sensor station, all 6 eyes tracking multiple tactical displays. They're using modified versions of Aldrich's neural tech to enhance their systems. Phantom growled from his position beside Nora, the sound carrying a clear warning. Through their newly developed bond, she understood immediately, the corporate ships weren't just defending themselves, they were learning, evolving their strategies with each exchange. They're not trying to destroy us, Nora realized, watching the attack patterns. They're collecting combat data. Even now, they're treating this as an experiment. Commander Torres's voice crackled over the comm. Captain, we're detecting power surges in their weapons arrays. Energy signatures match the neural control frequencies. They're going to try to reassert control over the liberated beings, Nora concluded. She turned to Phantom. Can you protect everyone? The wolf's response was immediate. He threw back his head and initiated the freedom signal, but this time it was different. The harmonic resonance spread through the ship, picked up and amplified by every freed creature aboard. The sound built into something new, not just a disruption signal, but a declaration of independence that carried through space itself. On the tactical display, hundreds of new signatures suddenly appeared, liberated beings from other facilities, arriving in commandeered ships, drawn by the call of their freed brethren. They emerged from hyperspace in a cascade of light, surrounding the corporate vessels. Incoming transmission, called out one of the communication officers. From the Nexus Corporation flagship. A holographic image materialized on the bridge, a woman in an immaculate corporate suit, her expression cold and calculating. Captain Blackwood. I am Director Emerson of the Nexus Corporation Board. Your interference in our research has cost us billions. Stand down now, and we may still reach an accommodation. Nora stood, Phantom at her side. I've seen your kind of accommodation, Director. It comes with neural implants and stripped away free will. Progress requires sacrifice, Captain. These creatures could be the key to humanity's dominance in the galaxy. Imagine, an army that can never be turned against its masters, weapons that can never misfire. That's where you're wrong, Nora replied. True strength doesn't come from dominance. It comes from trust, from cooperation, from choosing to stand together. She gestured to her crew, human and freed beings working as one. Look around you, Director. This is real progress. As if to emphasize her point, the liberated ships began moving in complex patterns, their crews demonstrating a level of coordination that no forced control could achieve. They weren't just fighting together, they were evolving together, each species contributing its unique perspectives and abilities to create something entirely new. Director Emerson's facade cracked slightly. You're throwing away humanity's chance at supremacy. No, Nora corrected. We're embracing humanity's chance at growth. At real evolution. She turned to her crew. All ships, initiate the Harmony Protocol. The freedom signal changed again, becoming something even more complex. Every liberated being added their own voice to the chorus, creating a quantum interference pattern that rippled through space. The corporate ship's enhanced systems, built on stolen neural technology, began to overload. What? What are you doing? Emerson demanded as her ship's systems started failing. Showing you what real cooperation looks like, Nora answered. Your weapons depend on control. Ours depend on choice. That's why you'll never win, because willing allies will always be stronger than forced servants. The corporate vessels hung powerless in space as colonial security ships moved in to secure them. On screens throughout the fleet, footage from Aldrich's facilities was being broadcast, the experiments, the torture, the truth behind Nexus Corporation's research. It's over, Director, Nora said. Your board members are being arrested across 3 sectors. Your facilities are being shut down. And your test subjects? They're not subjects anymore. They're citizens, protected under the Interspecies Rights Accord. As Emerson's image faded, Phantom pressed against Nora's leg, rumbling contentedly. Around them, their unlikely crew celebrated, humans and freed beings embracing their victory together. Captain, Torres called out, we're receiving messages from dozens of worlds. They're offering sanctuary for the liberated beings, requesting cultural exchange programs. The Galactic Council is convening an emergency session to review modified beings' rights. The end.